Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to be going over pivot tables and how they work, as well as some slicers and timelines and also calculated fields within our pivot tables. So, in case you haven't heard of pivot tables before, don't be overwhelmed by them. They're pretty simple to use once you get the hang of it. I really like them. I just actually figured out how to use pivot tables probably within the last few years or so. And they've greatly helped me, doing the different things that I do in Excel, especially with my clients' data and with my own data as well. So let's look at how pivot tables work just a little bit. We'll go ahead and go back to the example that I showed in the last video with our dashboard here. And I made this dashboard using pivot tables and slicers. So this is a slicer like we talked about last time, as well as this one. And this just allows you to pick certain, or to filter certain data within your pivot tables. And it also shows up on your charts and graphs. So if I wanted to pick just the things that Trader Joe's done, we can see just the things that Trader Joe's done with our data. So let's jump into the different things. So, all right, so this is the data that we're working with, and we can see from this dashboard we have three different charts here: quantity sold by customer, quantity sold by roast, and the revenue by the customer. Okay, so let's look at this, and if we were to try to make those charts based off of this table, we could do it, but it would take a little bit more input and a little bit more expertise on our part, rather than we could just use some pivot tables and make this a whole lot simpler. So going back to our dashboard, let's look at this revenue by customer over here. So what I did is I have a sheet down here. It says revenue by customer, and this is a pivot table. So let's say, and this is how the pivot tables are created. So you can kind of see this is what's going on behind the scenes in order for me to actually make this pivot table. We have the customer names, the dark roast, espresso, light roast, and this is all the revenues for each of these different roasts. So, and you can see over here, that's what I have checked off. I have the customer's name, I have the item description, which is the roast, and then the revenue for each. And then down here you can see the columns are the item descriptions. So these are the columns, the item descriptions. We have the rows, which are the customer names right here. And we have the values, which is the sum of the revenue. So it's taking all the revenue for the dark roast for Target and putting it all in one cell. And it's just condensing all of the information that we have in this table into a lot smaller table. So it's just aggregating all of our information into a lot smaller table for us to kind of look at and manipulate as well. So essentially, pivot tables allow us to aggregate our data pretty quickly and put everything in one spot, which is very concise, so that it's a whole lot easier for us to make our charts and graphs and make our slicers as well. So we'll go back to a more simpler version, or a simpler example. So we're going to go back to our coffee table that we've been using for the past couple examples. So in this example, we have our different brands, we have our flavors, our roasts, the units sold, the price sold, the cost, the revenue, the cost of goods sold, the profit, and our net margins. So we can see here that we've got a few that are Black Rifle coffee, a few Community Coffee, and a few Melaleuca. So what we want to do is, instead of having these separated like this, we can have them all in a more condensed version of this table. So let's go ahead and make our first pivot table. So all we need to do is basically just click somewhere inside of our data table here. We're going to go to Insert, and then there's Pivot Table all the way on the left here. And it says, do you want to go to a new worksheet or an existing worksheet? And you can see here to the table range, it's picking up our entire data range that we have up here. We move our text box over, and then we can either choose to use a new worksheet or an existing worksheet, and I'll just choose the existing worksheet. Normally I'll pick the new worksheet, but we're going to just do it in here. And then it's asking for the location. Let's just say we want it here, and it'll pop up for us there. Okay, and now you can see that this little sidebar pops up and it's saying pivot table fields, and it's giving us all of our column names. So that you can, if you look on our table here, it's each one of these, each one of our column names has populated into this this field's sidebar here. So what do we want to do? We want to see different things in our data that might give us some type of insights based off of our table here. So for example, let's just say we want to see the brands, and you can see as we click on certain things, like I clicked in that checkbox there, then it popped up, and you can see here that we don't have all these extra lines where it might have multiple community coffees, multiple Black Rifle coffees. It's just very condensed here, and this is also in alphabetical order. You can change that too if you would like. But okay, so we have our different coffee brands, and let's just say we want to know the profit of each. So this is actually giving us the profit of each one of our coffee brands, and we can check that pretty quickly. We can see that $750.70 for Black Rifle coffee, and let's come here and we can highlight all of our Black Rifle coffees and see $750.70 there as well. So we know that that's correct right now, but we can also do some different things here. We can say, all right, the units sold, and see that I'm clicking into these individual boxes, but you don't have to do that. This is also a drag and drop, so you could just drag this out of there, and once you drag it off, then it'll disappear for you. So let's go back to our profit. We wanted to see the sum of the profit, but also just know that I can come right here, drag my profit into values, and it'll populate that for you. So you can do different things with that. Also, if you wanted to get, let's say, the average of the profits, you can click into that by the little drop down arrow and click on value field settings, and it'll pop up. It'll give you different selections to choose from here. So let's say we wanted the average profits, and it'll change it to the average profit of each one of the coffee brands. And there's a lot of different things that you can do with pivot tables. And if if you're thinking about it, a pivot table, I mean, this table is literally, pivoting based off of the information that we're putting into it. So now let's find out what our profit is per unit sold with each one of our coffee brands. So we can go ahead and click into here, but the thing is, we don't actually have something that we can choose in here to automatically give us that information. So what we have to do is we have to do what's called adding in a calculated field. So what we can do is we can go into Pivot Table Analyze up here. You notice whenever you're clicking into your pivot table, it'll pop up and give you some a new toolbar up here. So you click on Pivot Table Analyze, and right here you see fields, items, and sets, and we can go into Calculated Field. And that's going to pop up. It's going to give us this little pop-up box, and we're going to name it. Let's see. We want to know the profit per unit sold. Okay, and it's asking us for our formula. So our formula is going to be, we do equals profit and insert field divided by the units sold. Insert field, and then we can click on add and okay. And now it'll add up our profit per unit sold. Just because we didn't have a selection to pick to give us that information, so we had to make one, and that's called a calculated field. And you can really do a whole lot of different things with that. And let's go ahead and see the units sold. So let's click on that one. And notice how it's kind of populating my information in an odd order. You can just come down here, and also you can drag and drop, and based off of the positioning of the what do you call it? I guess different categories down here, it'll change up here on our pivot table. So let's move this to the top, and you can see how it'll give us the sum of the units sold. So in total, 115 Black Rifle coffee bags, I'm assuming, sold for a profit of $750.70, and the sum per, and let's go ahead and calculate that. We can say 750.7 divided by 115, and that gives us our $6.50 per of profit per unit sold. So that's how you do a calculated field. That's just another way for us to do more things with our data that we weren't previously able to do. And even one step further inside of our pivot table here is, we have our coffee brands here, but we don't know exactly, let's say, how much of each brand is contributing to our units sold or our profit. What we can do is we can come in here and we can either pick on flavors or rows. Let's do flavors. So we're going to click on flavors and it's going to add it to our rows here. And you can see that it also gives us a breakdown underneath each one of our brands, the different coffee flavors that make up the entire sum of either our units sold or our profit per unit. So we can see that here. It represents it here. And if you highlight that, you can see that's 115. So this is working like we thought it would. Okay. So that's a pretty good rundown on how pivot tables work. Know that, they aren't as easy as I just made it look. There is some trial and error to it, so don't get discouraged if you're trying to figure out where to place. First off, where to place some of these categories in the fields down here. You could start out by just clicking the boxes. That's what I did to first figure out how to best set up these tables. But sometimes they don't go into the right areas, and you do have to manually move them around. So just kind of play around with that and you'll definitely get the hang of it. Just definitely you need some repetitions in there to really get the hang of it. Okay, now we're just going to take it one step further and move over into the slicers that I talked about in the beginning of the video. So in order to make a slicer, and let's just make the slicer first, and then I'll explain on how it works. But you have to go up again, click into your pivot table, then go up to pivot table analyze, and then right here you can see insert slicer and insert timeline. These two work very similarly, but let's go into insert slicer first. And you can see the different slicers that it's given us as different options. So what we could do is, we don't see any of our different roasts in here, so we can isolate our roasts, and we'll just click on the checkbox for roast. You can really check off all of these if you want to, but we'll just do the roast for now. And click OK, and you can see that it pops up a little slicer for us, and now we can pick different things in here, and it'll really filter out the data here. So let's go ahead and choose light for right now, and it's just giving us the light roast. It's not actually showing the data in here, but we do know that it is just light roast. We can scroll over into Black Rifle Coffee and see that Black Rifle is the only light roast that we have in our data. So that's a good way to really drill down into your data and get different types of information from it that you wouldn't normally just see just by glancing at it. And the good thing is that our slicers work on charts too, just like I showed you in the beginning of the video with all of the different companies and all that we had. Where's that? This. You can see that the slicers, while they affect the different pivot tables here, they also affect our different charts as well. Like I showed earlier, you can just click on one of them and it isolates that data. It's more of a filter, but they call it a slicer, so that's what we'll call it. And going back to our actual data set, we can come and make a chart from this now. So let's click into our data again. We're going to click on insert, and then from there we're going to click on pivot chart. Okay, and it's going to give us a pivot chart, and let's just click on OK, and you can see right now it's got all of our different, it's got our brands down here and each of the different flavors, but we can get rid of those if we want to. We can click on that, remove that entire field, and now it's just giving us the table of our the things that we actually want to see. The sum of the units sold, sum of profit, and sum of profit per unit sold. And just like on our other table or our other dashboard that we're working with, the slicers work with our chart as well right here. So we can go ahead and click on the light roast again, and you can see that we're only showing Black Rifle Coffee again, just because Black Rifle Coffee had the only light roast. So that was a quick rundown on pivot tables and slicers and how they work. We also talked a little bit about calculated fields and how we can incorporate that, just like the sum of the profit per unit sold here. And now it's actually in our chart here. You know, you may want to add in a secondary what do you call it, data set inside of this chart, just so, because the units here are really, it's just not giving us a good representation of our sum of our profit per unit sold. So you can do that as well. But like I said, this is a quick rundown on pivot tables and how they work. I usually use them whenever I'm making dashboards because, like I said in the beginning, it's a whole lot easier to aggregate the data that we need and even, you know, make different calculated fields so that we can actually get the data that we need, instead of, you know, just sitting here and saying, oh wait, I don't even have that because I have to make a whole new column in my data table and, you know, do all kind of other things, where it's so much easier just to make a calculated field here so that, you know, you're not screwing with all different kinds of data in your data table. But yeah, I hope y'all enjoyed this. In the next couple series coming up, we have what if analysis, and I was actually just doing these with a client last week, which was really helpful for her. I'm glad we met. And different ways to get data. So we've got these two videos left in our series, and then we're going to be jumping into more business related content. So different types of dashboards that I've been building out for clients, different types of just Excel sheets that help them in their day-to-day business activities. So be sure to stick around for those, because those are, in my mind, the most useful. So I hope you all enjoyed the video, and, you know, like I said, do not get or try not to get discouraged whenever you're using pivot tables. It's going to be a trial and error type of thing, but yeah, I think this is going to be very, very helpful for a lot of you out there with the discovery of pivot tables. So I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Thank y'all. See y'all next time.